see it is you've got two choices. You can either keep pretending like nothing bad's ever gonna happen to you, and then when it does, you're saying, uh-oh, or you can get ahead of what's coming so that when it does, not if, you're ready for it. And you're sitting pretty, sipping on Mai Tais next to the pool, working on that Caribbean suntan, because you got it covered. So folks, it's time for you to learn the truth about money. It's time for you to take back control of your money so that you are ready for what's about to happen. By doing that, you're setting yourself up for absolute success. No matter what comes your way, you're ready for it. And that's what I want for you, and I want to help you with that. So go to chrisnoggle.com and sign up for the Wealth Webinar. We do them every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and you need to be there because it's time.
For over 90 years, we've been crash testing our cars in the tireless pursuit of automotive safety. At Volvo, safety's been first since 1927. We've saved millions of lives with the invention of the three-point seatbelt in 1959. At Volvo, we've made driving safer for you and them. Visit safety.findlayvolvo.com to learn more.
So they say if you give a man a gun, he'll rob a bank. But if you give a man a bank, he'll rob everybody. The good news for you is Private Money Club runs solely on peer-to-peer relationships, which means no banks allowed. So finally, there's a community for real estate entrepreneurs where it is truly a win-win solution. This community is a place where you can connect with other lenders and other borrowers, and the end result's massive growth for you. You get to build your real estate empire, and you get to do it solving other people's problems. So if that sounds like a place you want to be, well then join us. Go to privatemoneyclub.com/Kelly. And if you want $500 off, just add the code Kelly500 and I'll knock $500 off the premier membership. We'll see you on the inside.
Welcome to the Kelly Cardenas podcast, where attitude is everything. I lost my voice when I was at the San Diego Padres game this last weekend, and I got a chance to be able to spend it with my best friend in the entire world since I was in 4th grade. And I'm going to talk a lot about him today. His name is Will, and big shout out to Big Willie. We got some shout outs to our sponsors. Findlay Volvo Cars of Las Vegas, Jim DiGiulio, amazing service, amazing man, and a guy who is just on a completely different level, taking things as far as service and showing people that the way that you treat people is more important than the product that you bring. But then when you bring the best product and you have the greatest service and treatment of people, it's amazing. But it always starts with his team, the way he connects with his team and the way he builds them up. Secondly is Mr. Chris Noggle. Chris Noggle has been an amazing man to me, helped me to see things from a different realm, look at money different, also to be able to become your own bank and break the cycle of financial illiteracy. And so check out Chris Noggle at chrisnoggle.com and the Private Money Club also. So I want to thank every single one of you out there that are listening, even to my voice today that's a little bit strained. But I want to thank every one of you for rocking with us on the podcast and helping us to get in the top 1% globally. It has been an absolute honor. So I wanted to jump right into my buddy Will. He called me the other day. Well, I generally have my birthday weekend every single every year. I connect with my buddies since I was in 4th grade, and we rent a house, we all hang out, we come and we ride bikes, do all the things. Well, we had set some stuff up, and obviously at the age that we are with the responsibilities that we have, none of my friends were able to make it this year, but he made a point to call me the other day, and he said, hey, look, we've got tickets to the Padres on Saturday, and we went and we had amazing tickets, about probably 8 rows off of home plate to see the Boston Red Sox. And it wasn't just about the experience itself as far as sitting close, which we had a great time, but it was about the ride there, the conversations that we got a chance to have, and things that I don't think can be replaced. This has been my best friend since I was in 4th grade. So I was 9 years old in 4th grade, and I'm 47 now, about to be 48 tomorrow. And so the relationship that I have with this young man is probably one of the greatest that I've ever seen. And well, that I've ever seen in my life. Not that, compared it to anybody else, but for me, this type of relationship too is a trust relationship where I know that no matter what goes on, I could trust my friend with it. And, you think about at 47 today and at 9 years old is when we met. And so that's what I really want to talk about today on Unscripted. And when we go in, it's great because I had reached out to a couple friends. None of them text me back right before the episode, and that's completely cool. But with these unscripted episodes, what I want to do is I really want to go in and be able to pour out out of my heart, what is actually going on in my life and what is actually going on, around me and the things that I'm becoming aware of. And the thing that I became aware of is with Will, I don't, as my friend since fourth grade, I really don't have to do any due diligence, meaning that I understand and I trust his character because of how long he's been around. And this is a major thing because what I notice a lot of times is, my mom didn't say this exactly to me, these exact words, but what I took from her is that if you could delay the ask, if you could delay the ask in whatever it is that you're doing and you simply become friends with somebody and you contribute to them at a high level, then when it comes time that there is an ask or there is an opportunity, there's not as much due diligence that has to happen. And, let me tell you this quick story about a guy named Troy Hoffman who I met down in Cancun or Tulum. We went down that way, and we got a chance to spend a little bit of time. And I met Troy and his beautiful wife, and Troy Hoffman, and we got to chatting. And people will a lot of times ask you what you do, but I sat with Troy, and it wasn't about what I did. It wasn't about what he did. It was just about becoming friends. Well, a couple weeks later, especially when you meet someone, on a trip and there's a lot of people there, kind of conference, a lot of times people say that they're going to connect, but they don't really. And Troy reached out to me. He said, "Hey, I am in Palm Springs. Would it be okay if we could grab some dinner? I could just drive down from Palm Springs to Carlsbad because I'm on my way to Huntington Beach." Well, any of you out there that know the West Coast, you know that Palm Springs is not close to Carlsbad, and it's not on the way to Huntington Beach. You can just take a beeline right to Huntington Beach. And the fact that he had called me and said, "Hey, I just would love to do dinner and I'll make the time," that meant a whole lot to me. And so we got a chance to be able to sit down and we had dinner and we were chatting, and it was almost like he was chomping at the bit to ask me if he could help me in any way. And I believe that a large part of that is because there wasn't really an ask when we started, right? So with this type of scenario, if you can simply just make friends with people, make friends, no matter where you go, and you're not looking to gain anything from them, you're just looking to contribute to them. And people ask me all the time, like, what can I do for you? You can be my friend. That's what I ultimately want. And I learned this from my mom, from my pop, and learn it a lot from my brother, where, my brother's not looking to network with people because he needs something. If he sees you as a friend or he sees you as somebody who he can pour into, he wants to spend time. And this was a thing that Troy Hoffman did with me, which I thought was amazing. And it goes back to my buddy Will, where I know that Will is on the level where he just wants to contribute. Like he's looking for nothing else. And we had so much fun that night. We got to go to we went to the Padres game. They actually lost. Tatis hit a home run. But we got to sit, we got to laugh. And I think it was such great therapy for both of us because, we get to shed all the things that we've ever done in our lives. And we get to go back to actually who we are, because I know no matter what I've ever done, no matter what I've ever accomplished or what Will's accomplished in his life, it doesn't matter in the scope of our relationship. And I want to connect this to as you're building a business and as you're building a brand, because people want to know that you're going to contribute to them. They want to know that it's not just going to be a transaction. And I learned this from Jim DiGiulio. That relationships have such a longer lifespan than any transaction. Transaction can be 1, 2, 3 things, that you do, 4, maybe 5, but a relationship is going to create miles and miles and miles of area for you to be able to connect with people, for you to be able to have opportunities together. And sometimes none of the opportunities come. There's a lot of my friends that I never do business with, that there's never any ROI to it, but the connection point is where the value is. And so, those relationships I think are huge. And another shout out that I want to give is to Mr. Gino. Gino, you know who you are, and your lady Tiffany. Congratulations to you guys on they're going to be getting married soon. And I gave a shout out to Gino on the I believe it was the last podcast or maybe one before. And his wife was like, "No, it must have been another Gino." No, it was Gino, Tiffany. I value him. I reached out to him the other day and I said, what do you take from the podcast? And what he was saying is that we're able to take iconic people from all over the world in all different realms. And he said, you guys humanize them because you have a real conversation. And he said that you helped me to see that other things are possible. And so that's the type of vibe that I always want to be able to bring in is, giving yourself the permission to just start. Sean Finnegan said it to me quite a few times, and I remember the first time it kind of blew my mind, where I was talking with him, my buddy in Utah that I do the Vibe Room there with him, and he said, it's the start that stops you. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, most of the time people are scared to start. They're scared to start, or they didn't give themselves permission, or they didn't understand, like they didn't feel as valuable, so their start stopped them. And it's such a simple concept, but that's where I really want to, I'd love to be able to dig into that today, because, what are the starts that stop us? And I was just on a podcast the other day, and I was talking with Scott and Jason Henderson, who are absolutely phenomenal. You need to check out their podcast. But I was talking with them, and they were saying that, it's the mindset. And this was the thing that I wasn't pushing back or saying to them, hey, it's not the mindset, but I think that there's too much emphasis on the mindset where there's not as much emphasis on the foundation of what the mindset and the skill set bring. So let's look at this. Like the mindset is going to be able to bring, like, it's what you say to yourself. It's the mentality that you put yourself in. My son, the other day, we were on our way to his flag football game. And while we're on the way, he wanted to change his mindset. So he likes to listen to Rocky, the theme from Rocky. And, so he goes in and he turns on the theme from Rocky 1. And he starts going nuts in the car. He's like, Dad, I'm getting in the zone. It's a mindset, right? With your mindset, it'll develop your skill set, right? So if you have your right mindset, like my son, turning on the music, getting himself hyped, he's focused, he goes in, he starts throwing the ball. His skill set is ultimately going to get better if his mindset's in the right place. And so, but I think the missing link in here a lot of times is the heart set. And I said this to Jason and to Scott on the podcast, and we were talking about it, and they said, well, tell me more about it. And I said, well, most of the time, let's go back to what Sean Finnegan talked about, that the start stops us. Well, why does the start stop us? Why do we not do something? Why do we not try something out? Most of the time it's because the things that we tell ourselves. And, we all go through this. I'm not immune to it. I love when people are like, yo, you got to just have a positive mindset all the time. Well, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you wake up and you hear that chatter of like, maybe you can't, maybe you tried a couple of times and it didn't work out. What are you thinking? And I believe the way to be able to get yourself reset on the mindset, obviously it's going to be things that you see, hear, and become aware of through the senses. But also, too, it's to go back to the foundation, because everyone has a plan, like Mike Tyson taught us. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And if you haven't got punched in the mouth in business or in relationships or in life, you just haven't lived long enough. So let's go into this heart set thing. This heart set thing, this is going to be the foundation, because what I find is that a lot of times people build their lives around a mindset, right? I got a mantra, and I say this mantra all the time. Well, I could tell you this. Every single person that I've ever been around that their heart isn't in the right place, but their mind is saying the right thing and their hands are doing the right thing, at some point it'll fall. And sometimes it won't. I mean, occasionally it won't, and it'll continue to grow. But I find that person then gets to a point, and then they start searching for something else. But if you can get your heart right, if you can get that heart set right, and let's go into this, I think you guys have heard me talk about it before with my parents, right? And so I used to always think that my parents, that everyone had the exact same parents. That's what I thought. I thought that everybody went through the exact same stuff. I thought that, the challenges that we went through as kids, and my brother and my mom and my dad and stuff, I was like, oh, well, this is what everybody goes through, until I realized that they didn't. And another thing is, I thought that every parent told their kid the exact same thing. And, my mom told me that I was awesome, that I was beautiful, and that I could do anything. My dad told me I was the greatest every single day. And so you can imagine, like, when you're going through it, it's not something that I think, I was celebrating while it was happening. But now I look back on it, and what they were doing is they were developing a heart set. And what I want to invite you to do today, and as you move along throughout your day, is let's not look at the circumstance, right? So the circumstances are something that happen. They're going to be the job comes, the job goes, the money comes, the money goes, whatever it is. But let's look at the principle based. So if we were to simply look at the principles, and we were to react off the principles and the laws, I think things would be a little bit different. And I tell you, this is myself included. Like, I was listening to a song by Talib Kweli the other day, and he said, my confidence comes from knowing God's laws. Sit in that for a second. My confidence comes from knowing God's laws. My confidence doesn't come from, he was saying, it doesn't come from the circumstantial part. It comes from knowing God's laws, and no matter what happens, if I apply principle to it as opposed to circumstance, then the paradigm changes. But the only way that I could apply principles to it as opposed to just react to my circumstance is if my heart is in the right place. Now, some people can argue and say that, which I think is a good argument. No, it's my mindset. It's my mindset. But let's go deeper, right? And I don't think that everyone has to have the exact same heart set, but most of the time when I'm coaching an individual, or I'm coaching a company, generally I just want access to the people. And so having access to the people, what happens is most of the time it goes back to people don't feel seen, don't feel heard, right? I posted something the other day, and I was talking about the fact that, we have to get the paradigm to change. Then we got to look at the vibe of what's happening within the organization. And she was like, well, a lady commented, and I thank her for it. And she was like, yeah, but how do I get my boss to understand this? And I said, well, the way to get your boss to understand is uninhibited, constant communication will break down all walls. Yeah. So if uninhibited, constant communication will break down all walls, and communication is speaking in a language that somebody understands. The other person understands, not just you. What I helped her to realize, or what I said to her, was we've got to understand the language that the company speaks. And every single company speaks exactly the same language. Every single one of them, no matter what company it is, they speak that they either need exposure, they need efficiency, or they need profit, or they need them all. Sit there for a second. They need exposure, meaning that they want to market and they want their brand to be known. They need efficiency, meaning that they have a lot of revenue coming in, but they need to tighten up their systems. And they need profit. Now, most of the time, efficiency means profit, but not always in the event that they don't have exposure. So if a company has exposure, they have efficiency, and they focus, they have the profit, that's where a company's mindset, that's what companies are built on. Now, I'm not saying that the individuals inside the company are built that way, but look at a company. Look at any company. That's the language they speak. Now, the individuals inside the company, they speak a different language. That language is, I need to feel seen, I need to feel heard. So imagine if the company could learn the language of the people, I need to feel seen, you feel heard, and the people can understand the language of the company, which means that I need to have exposure, I need to have efficiency, and I need to have profit. Well, now if I know the language that you speak, I speak your language, and I can give you the type of results that you want. Now, a company doesn't need to feel seen and feel heard. And a person doesn't feel super valuable just when they have exposure, when they have efficiency, and when they have profit. But now if I understand the type of language that you speak, guess what happens? Magic. Now the company starts to get exposure. As they get exposure, they thank their people. They recognize their people. They connect with their people. They ask their people questions. What happens more? That more and more exposure. When they ask them, when they celebrate what happens with the efficiency in their company, what starts to happen? More efficiency. When more efficiency happens, what happens? That creates more profit in the company. And that when that profit happens, if they turn it back and they ask the people, guess what starts to happen? Magic. But this comes from, again, from a heart set of looking and seeking to understand in the scenario, right? And these are massive, massive aspects as you move forward. And really, I mean, for me, it changes, it really changes the vibe of what happens. Because when I go into a relationship with the vibe of, I want to understand what your language is, and then I could speak in your language. Now, if my heart set is in a place where I'm going to go in and I'm going to understand what language you speak because I want to take advantage, you're going to feel that right off the bat. But if I go in saying that I want to contribute to you, I want to understand from your standpoint. I want to understand from your standpoint, and you can apply this from people to people, people to business, or even business to business. Now think of that, because that's a principle, right? We're talking about a principle. We're not talking about a circumstance. And most of the time people get so caught up on circumstances that's where they get bogged down. And this was the conversation that Will and I had the other night before the Padres game. And, you know, that may sound like a heavy conversation before a Padres game, but we just got a chance to be able to talk about it, and we were going back and forth as far as, like, most of the time people will bring a scenario. My daughter did it yesterday. She brought to me, and she was a little upset, and she brought me a scenario. Now, she doesn't like this because I always think about the principle aspect of it, right? So I'm thinking, like, okay, let's step back a second. Let's see where your heart's at. Let's see where your heart's at. Then we could develop your mindset. Then we could develop your skill set, right? But if we just look at the skill set, that's where you bring a circumstance to me, or you bring a circumstance to the situation, and then you say, fix this circumstance. And this is what most of the time we do, whether it be in business or in life or in relationships. We have the tendency to look at a circumstance, and then we want to answer to that circumstance. Well, if we don't dig in deep enough, then that circumstance is going to show us head again. Let's go back to the root of it. And the root of it is going to be the heart set. So let's take it to the heart set. You're awesome. You're beautiful. You could do anything that you put your mind to. My pop said, you're the greatest son, so act accordingly. Imagine if that, just for instance, and not everyone has to have the exact same heart set, but I'm saying, like, imagine if that was your heart set. You're awesome. You're beautiful. You can do anything. You're the greatest, so act accordingly. Let me take you through it. Number one, you're awesome. Separate yourself from your accomplishments. Number two, you're beautiful. Don't ever compare yourself to anybody. And number three, you could do anything, but just because you could do it doesn't make it your purpose. So be in line with what it is that your purpose is, right? And so the last one is you're the greatest. It's very simple. You're the greatest, so act accordingly. And imagine if we acted according to our greatness. No one out there, none of you listening, and I want to thank every one of you, none of you listening was born broken. None of you. Now, some of you could be like, oh, well, I have this, I have that. No, you were built perfect. Like, my pops would always tell me, like, God didn't make any junk and he didn't start with you, right? So if we establish that and we understand the truth, right? So we go back to Talib Kweli, my confidence comes from knowing God's laws. And what is God's laws? He made you in his image. And if he made you in his image, his image is pretty good. So you're perfect. So if you're perfect, then act according to that perfection. Let's go back to what my mom said. You're awesome. Separate yourself from your accomplishments. How many times have we ever looked at ourselves in the mirror and thought, wow, I need I need to do this thing and then I'll feel okay. And then you do that thing and what happens? You don't feel that okay. And I've gone through this so many times. I went through this with the podcast. I remember when I first started off and I was like, man, I need to be able to get 5,000 downloads. And it took forever. Nobody was listening to it. And then it came to 5. And I remember I was on the podcast with Eden Sassoon. If you haven't listened to it, it was an awesome episode. And I was chatting with her. And I said, oh, Eden, I'm just about to hit 10,000 downloads. My daughter said when I hit 10,000, she'll bake me a cake. And then she looked at me on the screen and she's like, so what's next? And I was thinking, 10,500? That's what I was thinking. And she was like, what's next? And then she paused for a second. And she's like, 50,000? And I was like, oh, slow your roll, lady. I just worked this hard to get to 10. But see, her perspective was coming from where she comes from. She was like 50,000, like 10,000, 50,000, let's go. It helped me with my perspective because for her, like I was looking at the comparison side. You're beautiful. Don't compare yourself to anyone. I was looking at the accomplishment side. Like, I need to get to this 10. In her head, she was just thinking, no, I mean, I've seen this stuff happen. She's been on network TV. Her dad is Vidal Sassoon. So she grew up in this realm. So her mind was just like, oh, cool. You got 10. We go into 50. And then what's next? 100? And I was thinking, slow your roll, lady. But she was saying, no, why don't you just release it? Let go of the accomplishment part. And start accepting stuff. Start accepting your greatness. And this is what my mom was telling me as a heart set. And it was hard for me to understand that. But let's go to the second one, which was you're beautiful. You're beautiful. Don't compare yourself to anybody. Now, I could have taken that Eden Sassoon and I could have been like, man, I'm going to compare myself to her. And, if I don't get 50,000. But, no, it expanded my brain a bit. And it helped me to realize that I don't need to compare myself to anyone in business, in life, in relationships, and anywhere because you don't know where that person has been. You don't know all the things that have gone into it. And so, be so joyous about what's happening right now. And then the last one is you could do anything, but do anything that you put your mind to, but just because you could do it doesn't make it your purpose. How many things? Ask yourself, how many things could you do right now if you just worked at it? I could say there's very few things that you wouldn't be able to accomplish, but that doesn't make it right for you right now. And imagine that heart set. You're awesome. Separate yourself from your accomplishments. You're beautiful. You don't compare yourself to anybody. You could do anything that you put your mind to, but just because you could do it doesn't make it your purpose, and then you're the greatest, so act accordingly. Imagine if you walked into a scenario like that and then a business deal went bad. Okay, cool. So separate myself from my accomplishments. Did I try? Did I step in? Was I in the arena? Yes. Cool. Good. I'm out. Right? I learned a lesson. Imagine if a thing went right. Then you're still, you're still not what you accomplished. It doesn't mean you can't accomplish great things. But imagine if that was the heart set, then the mindset comes in, right? So the mindset is a tactical way, is a tactical strategy, right? So we got principles in the heart set. We got tactical strategy here. And then we got implementation in the skill set. And imagine we have our heart set in a place where we give ourselves permission to try. Where if we try and it doesn't work out, then we write it down. And then if it doesn't, if it doesn't work, we write it down. If it does work, we write it down. If it doesn't work, we have a short memory. If we do succeed, we have a short memory too, because we don't want to bring ego into it. And then we have a strategic side of a mindset. And imagine the mindset of just saying just be really, really kind. Make a ton of friends and stay curious. And then imagine if you had a skill set, a tactical skill set that just said, okay, cool. I know that vibe will change everything. Like if I bring the right vibe, I was riding my bike to the beach the other day. As I was riding it, and I was on the sidewalk, sharing the sidewalk, and I've got a pretty big bike, and it's an electric bike. And it's pretty intimidating. And there was a elderly couple walking on the sidewalk, and they could have been like, "Get off my lawn, kid." But before I got there, I put a smile on my face. I said good morning, and I said, "It's great to see you this morning." And what it did is it changed the vibe of those people. I could see that they were sour at first because I was taking their sidewalk. Excuse me. But what happened was it changed the vibe. They said hello to me back. They asked me how my day was, and I was able to pass them on the sidewalk. You can do this by choosing the type of vibe that you want to bring in. But see, that's the skill set. My skill set gives me, like if your mindset's in line and your heart set is solid, your skill set will always show up. And then you can try things out, because when you try things out, imagine with your mindset that you are, just really, really kind to people, you make a ton of friends and you stay curious. Imagine when you go into the skill set part, now you could try things and you could be like, oh, well, was it in line with my heart or my mindset? Was I kind? Was I trying to make friends? Was I really curious and asking people questions? Well, if that's the case, then your skill set is going to be able to build and you're going to be able to try things. Well, imagine if I think of, if I'm kind, if I make friends, if I stay curious, imagine if I go back to my heart set. Is it in line with my heart set? Those things are in line and it will spit out the skill set. And then that way you don't have to worry about being good at anything. It's just because all you need is the opportunity to be able to try and be in the room. And so as we finish today, I want to encourage every single one of you, as opposed to looking at the mindset, because you can listen to, honestly, like you could probably listen to one Instagram page or one YouTube channel and get it all, right? Like, I got to get my mind in the right place. I got to have a mantra. I got to have all that. And I understand, like, those things can work at certain times. But if your heart's not in the right place, it doesn't matter. If you build a house on the sand, the house is going to crumble. So let's look at the sand. That's that's the part that is most people are not that excited about, because it's dirty, it's nasty, but it's the foundation. But imagine if we took the foundation and we said, I'm going to put my heart set in line. I'm going to put my heart set in line, and I'm going to realize that I'm awesome, I'm beautiful, and I could do anything. I'm awesome, separating myself from my accomplishments. I'm beautiful, don't ever compare myself to anyone, and I could do anything that I put my mind to, but just because I could do it doesn't make it my purpose. And then just think of this, sum it all up. You're the greatest. Gino, you're the greatest. Tiffany, that was Gino. Gino, you're the greatest, so act accordingly. That's one of his favorite quotes. That's what he told me from my pop. And imagine if we just thought that every single day, I'm the greatest, so act accordingly. And you started acting according to your greatness. Then you applied a mindset. Now, I'm not saying take on my mindset, but this is my mindset, is be really kind, make a ton of friends, and stay really curious. Be the dumbest person in the room. Ask questions. And then my skill set, it becomes pretty simple, right? Because all I have to do with my skill set is it's not the skills that I have, it's the vibe that I bring with the skills. So now when I go in, it's not always the same one. It's not always the same vibe. The vibe needs to be fluid. But now if I bring in a skill set, which I know that if I do it long enough, it can work out, that if I make a ton of friends, I stay curious, I can learn from my friends. If I'm kind and I contribute to people, then they'll want to help me out. So my skill set is a byproduct of my heart set and my mindset being in line. And so when those things start to happen, then I've got to add the secret sauce, and the secret sauce is you. It's always you, but it's got to be a vibe that you choose. And to choose the right vibe, just understand the language that the person speaks. If it's a company, if you're dealing with a company, if it's you as an individual and you're dealing with a company, then realize that there's people inside the company, right? And so if you deal with the people inside the company, they want to be seen, they want to feel heard. So what type of vibe do you want to bring in? A curiosity vibe. That way you can ask questions. You ask the right questions to the right people, you get the right answers. but also know the language of the company. And what's the language of the company? Every company wants the exact same thing. They want exposure, they want efficiency, they want profit. That's what they want. The people inside the company want to feel seen, want to feel heard. Now imagine if I could just take and make all the people feel seen, feel heard, make the company more efficient, more exposed, and more profitable. Who wins? Everybody. I want to thank you all for being here on the Unscripted podcast, or this Unscripted episode of the podcast. I appreciate you. The greatest thing that you could ever do for me, people ask me this all the time, the greatest thing that you could do is leave a review. Oh, if you're listening on Apple, leave a review. Rate it and then leave a review. On YouTube, subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. My son thinks it's cool when I have subs. That's what he says. And I'll leave you with this. Is my daughter, when I talk about speaking the language of the people that you're dealing with, is I've had to learn this because I have a 14-year-old daughter, and we were in church yesterday, and the pastor said something, and it was very emphatic, and I just turned to my daughter at 14, and I was like, dead ass. And she looked at me and she's like, you're not supposed to say that in church. But she laughed because that's her thing. Like, that's a part of her language. If you use the language of the person that's speaking with you, you'll communicate at a higher level. And when that happens, they feel seen, they feel heard. They will give you all of their skill set. They will teach you all their skill set. And if you do that with a multitude of people, what happens is, if they all work together inside of a company and they all feel seen, they feel heard, guess what happens to the company? It gets exposure, it becomes more efficient, and it becomes more profitable. Heart set, mindset, skill set. I want to thank all of our sponsors. I want to thank every one of you guys for rocking with the podcast and helping us get in the top 1%. Mr. Gino, there's the third shout out to you. I absolutely love you. Mr. Wayne, thank you so much. Wayne Freeman, thank you so much. Even though you're a Chiefs fan, I want to give a huge shout out to you. And Mr. William Simmons, my best friend since 4th grade. I love you so much. Check out Jim DiGiulio, Findlay, Volvo Cars of Las Vegas, and Mr. Chris Noggle. And coming soon, we got a new sponsor that's going to be on the podcast, which is going to be absolutely phenomenal. You know exactly who you are, and we're going to have some fun with that. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening, sharing, and doing your thing. And I am officially off the hot seat.